was thinking if we got all the states on tonight. Anyway, I've invited people in the West and people in South Australia and all over the place tonight. So anyway, and we have Bali connections tonight. So big warm welcome to you wherever you are in the world. And where we are. So enjoy. What we're going to hear tonight is, I think, life-changing for a lot of people. Doesn't matter where you are in agriculture, or primarily we're talking about production and farming and all those bits and pieces, but at the end of the day, we all need to eat, and the end product is eating. So we're very fortunate to have Neil, who's got up at 3 o'clock this morning in Canada, and I believe it's minus 14. So anyway, it's about 20 degrees right here, and it's, anyway, very nice weather. But more than anything, it's important that we start to really think about how can we make a big change for commodities, as in farming and in communities. And what if you're new tonight? You're being invited to be part of a community call. I'd like to say that, and it's a community call that we're going to grow over this year of 2026. And you'll probably start to hear from a lot of different people, like-minded people, people who think like yourself. But more importantly, it's how we can help our primary industry develop and grow to the next level. Some of you may know Larry Fink, if I said that name to you. At the end of the day, Larry Fink mentioned the other day at Davos that he's going to tokenise or tokenisation of the stock exchange will happen in the next couple of years. Now, if these words are all new to you, and when you hear Neil tonight talk about different words, please don't get concerned. Just write them down, make a little note. And for all of you who'd like, you can have a one-on-one session, as in a one-on-one Zoom call. We'll call it R-Link call with Neil at some stage. And I think he'll be able to clarify a lot of things. And the people who invited you on tonight may be even able to clarify any questions you have. But I'm not going to hold up everyone any longer. I just wanted a big warm welcome on behalf of the community to you. And I'm going to hand over to Neil, who's all the way over there in Canada. And thank you, Neil, for taking the time to share this great opportunity, great community that is a global community that we're all part of here right now. So over to you, Neil. Thanks.
Amazing, Charlie. Thank you so much. And good evening to wherever you are located in the world today, mostly Australia. Charlie started like any good farmer. He talked about the weather, and that's something that we talk about on a regular basis. So I like that head nod. I'm really excited to get up every Wednesday morning at 3 a.m. Yeah, I'm a bit of a crazy farmer, but the opportunity to speak to you Australians, where I've actually spent a lot of time in my farming career, is terrific. And as we expand, grow into the Australian market space, it's really encouraging to see the numbers grow on this call every Wednesday morning, and the opportunities starting to take shape. So today we're going to talk about Grow. We're going to talk about why I'm here, really, a bit of the mission, and then some of the things that we're doing at Grow, and why that might fit into, if you're a farmer, your operations, if you're in the supply chain, your business, and if you're a consumer, why it might be important for you to be involved. So without further ado, let's dive into it. I actually will mention, since last Wednesday, I've had a lot of conversations with some of the farming network that I had out in Esperance over on the Western Strat of Australia. I was talking to folks over at the GRDC, which is more on the grain side of farming, really diving into some of the reporting there. And then Covey Station, which is a cotton operation, had some good conversations with them this week. So really, really exciting, continuing conversations with farmers in Tassie. I'm trying to connect, so I've actually got tomorrow some conversations with more farmers in Victoria. So my schedule continues to fill up, and it continues to be Aussie focused, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for making time. Grow is all about making farmers the hero of the story again. And while that is a a very large overarching statement. We really do need to focus on why producers, doesn't matter where you fall in the agriculture cascading umbrella, we need to focus on farmers having a voice, farmers being more involved in the whole process from paddock all the way through to consumer, and actually reducing the amount of intermediaries or eliminating some of the unnecessary middlemen, or the messy middle, as I call it, so that there's more dollars or there's more opportunity flowing back into the producer's operations. At the end of the day, this means that we're going to be putting a little more breathing room under the collar so that we can create resiliency in those production operations, and really ensure that we focus on our ecological system as well as nutrition in the food that we're raising or growing. And so that really is where Grow comes in as a facilitator. The reality is that farmers today have a ton of things going against them. We've asked farmers to do a ton and take on a lot, but markets are shifting regularly. Anyone that's on the call, you're probably paying attention to some of the markets as it relates to food, the inflation of food, the changing global market space in terms of new agreements and agreements that are maybe being X'd based on tariffs. So those market demands are real and they're shaking. And I think every producer, certainly that I talk to, recognizes that if there isn't a market, it really is very hard to continue farming. And so we need to ensure that we have a different voice as we bring producers to the table in being able to try to dictate different market outcomes. Weather, Australia is being certainly no different than Canada, really, just a very different weather scenario. You're dealing with droughts and fires and heat and things that really slow you down and devastation. Some of you throughout the year have dealt with storms and different scenarios around those very temperamental conditions. In Canada, I deal with snow. We're just coming out of minus 40 something. We had a couple of cattle that didn't make it, got a little bit frost bitten, and so it's a reality. The weather is out of our control, and though we try to set up for it, it's something that we just have to deal with. And so we're trying to create, through Grow and through our community, a bit more resiliency so we can deal with the market and the weather as they come at us full throttle. Government regulations. This is really where it gets exciting, actually. Though we may love to hate the regulations that are coming in, and we may really be challenged by some of the regulations, what Grow offers is an ability to toe a line in the sand and actually have conversations where we bring a solution. And that solution is the blockchain. It is around something that everyone in the messy middle and certainly government and regulators want, and that's the commodity that we all farm, regardless of where you fall, which is data. And in that, we can put that on an immutable or tamper-proof ledger and really be able to flip the script in the conversations or have different conversations. And what I mean by that, we create some positive friction in the conversations we're having, but we can actually point to something that hasn't been manipulated or tampered with, and really talk about the good, bad, ugly of the data, which is what everyone leans into as we start talking about regulations and different risk scenarios, and talking about how we continue to stand up our agriculture community in Australia. And so that is what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. And that's probably the easiest stepping stone, is really talking about how we get your data onto the blockchain and what that means for your operation. All those three things that are outside of our control have a human cost. And this is maybe an underlying mission of Grow, is really to continue to support the human component of producers and everyone involved. So, whether it's financial strain, which comes because of the preceding three elements that I just talked about, whether it's isolation, because it's easier to go out and fix fence or search for cattle, or get lost in our environment by ourselves, or whether that's just the inability to think that you don't have any resources or outlets. We're hoping that we can change that. So if you look at that little purple square box on the screen, that last bullet point there, that's something that really strikes home with me. And it's something that we're hoping to turn the corner on, because we have a community that is head and heart aligned, and that we offer an outlet and we offer opportunities. And everything we do at Grow is really moving towards ensuring that this stat continues to take a different turn, and we reduce that number significantly. The bigger problem is this, and this is where those flipped conversations with regulators, this is where us having a larger voice in the messy middle, from the producer side and even from the consumer side, is really going to start to break this centralization up. So I typically bring centralization into the conversation and go all the way back to the end of the World Wars. That's when centralization really took shape. And granted, we needed it. We needed to right the world. We needed to create some opportunities to get things back onto an even keel, as it were. But we hit this tipping point right around late 70s, early 80s, where it wasn't about doing what's right for us as a human nation, as a global nation. It really became about profits, and it became about gluttony and trying to really squash the people at the bottom of the totem pole. And those were the individuals, many of you on the line today, the producers, those that are working the land, the blood, sweat, and tears. And so the central conglomeration is controlled by just a few entities. And those entities, both on the consumer brands and in our food brands, really have gone into creating a lot of issues, both health-wise, over-processing of our foods, and by market pricing, market dictation, even trade agreements. And what we need to do is we need to start shaking this up, breaking this up. The funny thing is a lot of these central, larger conglomerates, they're already positioned for a word that I'm going to bring in called decentralization. And it's up to us to really push those conversations. And so I like to point the finger at these organizations, but I also like to come with a solution. I think far too many people point the finger and then there's no follow through, there's no solution. Well, we have a solution, and that solution is called the Grow blockchain. And it really allows us to push the buttons and really create some different conversations. But this is the biggest problem that we need to start to correct. And from the consumer side, it really means getting more nutritious food back on the table so that we can correct some of those chronic health issues that continue to arise. Some of you may know me. Some of you are just getting to know me. I'm a farmer by trade. I grew up in a blueberry and cattle operation. In fact, we sold most of our blueberries out to Japan. I grew up in the mountains in farming, so it was a little more of a hostile and unique farming experience. I moved out to the prairies of Canada, where I still own and operate a smallhold farm, and very fortunate to have a little spit of land that I get to call home. But agriculture has allowed me to scratch a living. And it's been very kind to me, and I'm being very blessed. I've been able to work globally. I had a consultancy for about 15 years where I really helped farmers and ranchers and producers and got into controlled environment agriculture, greenhouses and vertical farming, diversify their balance sheets. And that started with ecological improvements. So how do we improve the land, or how do we improve your efficiency in your ecological setting? And including the CEA, the controlled environment, and that included putting fish in and circular water systems. And everything for me is about a system of systems. I think farming is one of the hardest systems of systems, a bit of an engineering brain, but everything has to work in a interlocking way, which means monocrop anything is against my grain, against my ethos. We really need diversity, and we need to ensure that there's a knock-on effect for everything we do. On my own farm, I take all my animals' poop and we take all the byproduct. We actually have a little bit of a methane gas boiler. I've got in-ground compost. I actually take my septic mound and I use anaerobic bubblers, and we actually clean the water all the way on the back end and put that back on the fields as irrigation. And so it's a full closed loop system. And that is really what I like to do with producers and farmers, is figure out how we have that knock-on effect. And then how do we track that? How do we present that information? How do we show people that this can work? We don't have to be, farming the way that we used to. So lifelong work in agriculture, and I'm very blessed to be here today. What Grow allows me to do is everything I was doing before, but on steroids. I'm able to expand our opportunities in a way that I haven't been able to before. It was the missing link for me, and it's why I was so excited to jump in and really be part of positioning Grow as an opportunity globally, but for this purpose, for expanding into Australia. A bit more about me. Well, my wife, she's from South Africa. She's on the image there on the left. I did lasso her. I'm not sure how I got so lucky to be able to bring her into my life, but she continues to challenge me in every way possible. And I think with her growing up on a sugarcane farm in Australia or in South Africa, it's really allowed me to get a different perspective of segregation that was happening there during the time, and what do they needed to do to continue to scratch a living. But I've been really encouraged by her drive to push me to continue to bring this information forward, to continue to get up at 3 a.m. So very thankful for the opportunities that she presents me, but also challenging me to think differently about how we think about agriculture and all the different perspectives that come with that. That farm that I was talking about, this is a little bit about my farm. I like to show who I am and give you a little bit of behind the curtain visibility. We do have a lot of the white stuff on the ground. As Charlie mentioned, it's -14, which is much warmer than it was. I'm sitting in a t-shirt today and almost sweating, but we still run a herd of cattle. We have wonderful landscape, and there's a lot of synergies between Canada and Australia, actually. It's a reason why we're such great agriculture partners and why there's a lot of reciprocity that happens between our two nations. And so it's quite encouraging. But if you're ever over in Canada, please do reach out to me. I'd love to have you out at the farm. I don't put you to work unless you'd like to, but certainly we do a lot of fun things. We brew our own beer out there. My father has a still. Not that I'm pushing any one beverage over another. We also just have some great, very clean crystal water out in Canada as well. I do like to design things. So part of the work I was doing this past week was actually with a group called Seed Terminator, and they're a grain termination device that you stick on the back of a combine, and it's really starting to pick up in terms of volunteer seeds that come off of combines during harvest, and reducing some of the pressures that happen in the soil during the time of harvest. And so I've been in touch, and there's a few other machines out there. Harrington, actually, that was developed over in WA, the IDHS or IHSD. Nonetheless, it's all around design. And so the reason I show this, the reason I talk about this is I've got some clout. Not only do I like to fix things, not only do I like design things, I like to speak about it, and I like to talk about it from a practical standpoint. So everything that we do at Grow has use cases behind it because we've done it at least 3 times, meaning it's good science. And this is why we're very passionate about talking about the things we're doing. So sometimes you may hear projects talk about, particularly in the Web3 industry, which is what blockchain is, the future state. And that's wonderful. But Grow comes from a place of case studies. We've actually done it. We have practical use cases. These are just some of the other things that I've done and developed and continue to bring forth from a technical standpoint and from a true in-field opportunity. And I also am a consumer. I like to consume a lot of coffee. I've got my coffee right beside me today. It's just starting to kick in. You may notice by the speed of my voice. But I like to actually take raw product and turn it into something wonderful and nutritious. And so, that process of roasting for me is a very therapeutic process and something that I spend a lot of time focusing on. And I like to show the fact that in Canada, we do have some wonderful landscapes, but that integration of multiple use factors and really thinking about how we set up our operations is really well represented by this agrivoltaics image on the left-hand side of the screen. So we hear a lot about renewable energies and the use of arable farmland turning into solar or wind farms. I think about it from a different perspective. We need to integrate it in a way where it's 1 + 1 = 3. And that's what I do. And we can do that with multiple different crops. We can do that with cattle. We can actually put solar and cattle. And so it's about the integration. And these are some of the ideas that I bring forth when we think about diversifying the balance sheets. And yes, some days I do get to be on the 80th floor in New York talking to a bunch of boardrooms about the bioeconomy boardroom execs that is. And then in North America, I get to work on this little line. We hear a lot about these international borders and the constraints. We're all producers. We're all part of this larger food global economy, and Australia is part of that as well. And I think it's so funny when we think about Canada, the US, there's literally just a post on the line, and I've worked on both sides of that post, and I know the farmers well. We're actually a lot closer linked than we imagine, and we're all doing the same things, fighting the same battle. And so Grow as a community, Grow is here to really present knowledge and information from all walks of the world and life, and bring that as a community to anyone joining our community, so that we have just different opportunities and different conversations to continue to think about how we are operating as a global agri-food market space. And then again, if you went back to that second slide and you saw that purple box, I can't stress enough about the human side of the impact. Farmers are at the edge of the cliff in terms of where they're positioned. Australia is sort of a key example of what's happening there. Very, very dire straits in some aspects of agriculture in Australia. All these 5 hats represent somebody that I've actually known that's no longer here with us. And it is a very, very unfortunate scenario. We've set that up. And we have the ability to change that. And so if you know a farmer, if you know a producer, if you know somebody that is at the edge of the cliff, isn't doing so well, and is just looking for another outlet, get them on the line with me, get them on the line with our community members, and let's have some conversation. This isn't about selling a widget. This is truly about providing some support. And if it's just a conversation, we're here to have that. We're here to listen. So let's reduce the number of hats, or at least not add any more hats to this log. And that really takes us in to thinking about what if. The Grow blockchain, what if we could prove where our food was produced, and how it was raised and grown, and particularly what we're doing to put into that, and ensure that information isn't going to be turned around and whipped against us as producers? What if we had access to different market spaces? What if we could reduce some of that compliance friction? What if we could actually stay independent? In fact, invite our kids back into the farm without having to be worried about selling off, legacy farmland, just to ensure that we're staying afloat. And what if we could actually future-proof our operations? Well, I believe we can, and we're seeing it happen in certain parts of the world because of the Grow blockchain, because of the products and services that we have and the solutions. All of that filters down to decentralizing the agri-food market space, meaning that we're providing more opportunities for producers, really getting them to reduce the distance between them and the consumer, really pushing back against some of that centralization that was happening in that third slide that I showed you, creating different friction points so that we have different outcomes. All of that is decentralization, and that means we can accomplish all those what-if scenarios. And so you as producers on the phone, on the meeting today, I want you to think of yourself as pioneers. I mean, you have been pioneers, you are pioneers, farmers were pioneers back in the day. I'm reading a good book right now about cattle traders back in the early 1900s. And we think about the pioneering, ingenuitive brain that we had to have as we brought food into the opportunities for consumers to consume. We've asked a lot of farmers. I mentioned that earlier. We ask you to take on new ag technology. We ask you to do new things on a regular basis. And what I mean by we, that's the ag consumers. That's everyone in the world is asking farmers to continue to challenge themselves, to be better, to do things differently, to improve our landscape. We hear this notion that agriculture is one of the biggest contributors to climate change, and we also are one of the biggest components to fixing climate change. And so farmers are really in this interesting position. And I want you to continue thinking of yourselves as pioneers, because with that hat on, we think about the opportunity to grow a little bit differently. This isn't about taking on a new ag tech technology and saying, okay, what widgets do I need to push? What subscription service do I need to pay for? This is really about embracing an emerging technology that allows you to have sovereignty, ownership, and control, and using it for the benefit of your operations, and so that we can have different conversations. That really is that pioneer mindset. That is not just a consumer mindset, that's a pioneer mindset. And so that's really where I want you to be positioned today, and how I want you to think about yourselves. The mission at Grow is really to take everything that I've talked about, the what if scenarios, the decentralization, so that we can nourish people, our friends, family, and global community, animals, and the planet. All three need to happen. This doesn't happen in a silo. We're not just feeding people. Of course, we start there because we need to combat some of the health issues that are going on, really understand the nutritional factors. But animals are important. We need more diversity, brought back to our landscape, but even the animals that are domesticated, that we're raising, we need to ensure that they're being nourished, because a lot of those animals turn into food downstream. And so we need to understand what they're eating and what animal welfare means. And the planet. Let's not forget about the ecological components. We can actually farm and leave our ecological footprint better than we found it. And for some of us as farmers, that seems a little bit out there. It seems a little bit of like a stretch, something intuitively we want to do, but we're saddled between finances and markets and a changing climate. And we can only do what we can do. And so sometimes that seems a little bit scary, but it's something that we can actually do. So nourishing people, animals, and the planet. And I want you to keep that in mind, really. So you as producers are the farmer of the story again, and the hero of the story again, not the farmer of the story, the hero of the story again. And so that consumers have more trust. And really, consumers have been screaming and crying for a long time we need to better understand how our food is raised and grown. Well, we can provide that at Grow. We can provide that trust and that transparency, and we can get them to have a closer connection to how their food has been raised and grown, be edified in a way that we've forgotten about. And so that we're not just walking aimlessly in a grocery store just picking up food. We're actually paying attention to the foods and where it's coming from, and potentially reducing the number of large grocery stores and going back to more independent spots to access your food. And that really is going to change everything. We're starting to see a bit of that happening. I say one of the biggest constraint points in our whole agri-food market space are the grocers, and that we need to actually change how grocers are set up and go back to a different way of operation on how food gets from paddock to plate. So let's talk about the Grow blockchain. Grow blockchain sits in a space called Web3. Web3 is a bunch of coding language that really is about ownership economy. But I'm going to take you back to Web 1. Web 1 was when we first were introduced to the World Wide Web. It came out of the military's hands, and it came into the world of every individual. And I remember driving around in a tractor and being able to look things up on an old laptop. That sort of puts my age perspective into my age into perspective, but it was wonderful. I remember being able to trust information. I looked things up and it presented information, and we trust it. We blindly trust what was on the World Wide Web. People were using it for good intention, and it was great. It was great source of information, just like encyclopedias were, predating the World Wide Web. And this was something that really allowed us to unite ourselves. That little Facebook image that we have there really started connecting us and making this large world a lot smaller in terms of where we fit and the conversations we're having and the people that we knew and where they ended up in the world. That quickly moved into Web 2. Web 2 is the world that we predominantly find ourselves in today. This is the what I call the monopoly monetization world. Everything we do on the World Wide Web today pretty much involves a payment structure. You think about your mobile device, no matter if you're part of the Apple cult or otherwise. All the applications on there pretty much need a subscription. You got to pay for it for a period of time. Everything we do on the internet today involves us not only paying, but putting data about ourselves. I use Uber as an example. I do a lot of travel. I speak all over the place. I talk to farmers. In fact, I was just on a plane yesterday. We put a lot of data into the world, right? And we don't know where it goes. And so Uber probably knows more about me than I know about myself. It knows all the credit cards that I've gone through as they've expired, or it's got compromised and I've had to change it. They know every hotel I've stayed at. They know my home address. They've seen my picture change 2 or 3 times. And funnily enough, my Uber app on my phone is all in Russian. I can't get it into English for whatever reason. And so sometimes I don't even know what I'm clicking. And they stick their hand up and they self-promote the fact that they sell all that information to the highest bidder. They sell it to aggregators so that I could be marketed to. And that's really, really scary. That is happening in agriculture today. All our information. And so there's wonderful ag tech platforms that we use, that we're paying a subscription to, that we put information into so that we can get fancy reports or information back on our operations. All that information is going somewhere. There's a lot of great ag tech companies that say, hey, ethically, we're not going to sell this off, but we don't know where that information goes. The point is that you don't have control over it. Well, move over to Web3, the ownership economy. This is what the Grow blockchain does at its very core level. It allows you to, at the same time you're putting information into these ag tech platforms, we can actually mirror that information on the blockchain, and you can actually own your data. You can actually understand your data and actually have a point of time ledger that the data sits on, that you can always go back and pull forward for different conversations, to challenge somebody if they've taken your data and used it in a way that wasn't intended. And you can start to use this data, either store it and figure out what to do with it in the future, but you can analyze it with AI. It works, AI and Web3 work far better together. And then you can monetize it as well. And so we can start to use data in a way that is more transparent, but also gives you a lot more control. And that really is a word that I like to use. Is called sovereignty. It gives you a lot more sovereignty around the use of data. And that's changing everything. It's changing everything on many different market spaces, but particularly in the agri-food market space. And so Grow is part of a larger group of sister chains using the same core foundational tech. I like to show this slide just that it really helps us understand all the different markets that are using blockchain to decentralize, the things that are very important to us. Agri-food being, highly important, but Grow fits into this as a way to ensure that blockchain Web3 has a spot, that is, beyond us. And so I think about what we're doing at Grow is so pinnacle, because everyone eats and what we're doing is so important, but it also interconnects with all these other aspects of how we continue to live. And so whether that is rideshare programs, or whether that is, an ability to talk about gaming institutions for our kids that are very into games, or thinking about, mining operations and how do we create more ethical mining, for the fact that things go into this to create these devices. All of this is centered around data, and we can actually use blockchain to decentralize. So when we think about Grow, we're actually thinking about a larger ecosystem that really provides a lot of benefits. The future really is now, though. And so, again, this may seem far-fetched, but we have the ability to take the technology we have, this emerging technology, and plug it into your operations so that you can have different outcomes. But if we don't do anything, we're going to be on this slope. And so business is normal. I was presented this graph back in university, and there's 2 graphs that really stuck out to me. This one and another one around the mean average. And it was really, the professor came online and he put a bunch of dots on the whiteboard. And he put 1 dot above the mean average and 1 dot below. And so there was a chart looked much like the red line. And he said, we cater down. And so all the dots cater down to the bottom dot, and we forget about the outlier at the top. Well, I think about that graph from the perspective that Grow is actually leveling up. We're actually catering up. We're not catering down to the lowest denominator. But we want to get off of business as normal, which means doing nothing or hiding or hoping that things will change. That's going to lead and continuously lead on a downhill slope. The disruption of technology, well, we're inundated with technology on a regular basis. What happens is like a moth to a light bulb. We see this big uptake, and then it kind of drops off because it falls back into, we don't have control, there's centralization, there's ongoing fee structures, there's an inability to really make this work economically on our balance sheets or ecologically, and so it sort of drops off. And And that has a large factor on lack of control, lack of sovereignty. And so Grow presents a different option. We cater up, and we also present opportunities for you to have control and for you to use this for the benefit of your operations. And I'm actually happy to report that we see ourselves above the red and blue line. We're actually moving on this uphill trajectory right now. We're really starting to do things both on the decentralized finance side of our opportunity and in the products and services and solutions that we're bringing forth to help you diversify your balance sheet. And so it's really exciting time to think about how Grow is fitting into your operations. So what is decentralization? We hear a lot about this word, but we know what centralization is. It's those images that I showed you, and just a couple companies at the top winning, and at the peril of everyone below that. Well, decentralization is really an ability to take information. We can do traceability, and you can actually own the information that is part of that traceability and the paperwork that tends to overload us. Well, we can use the blockchain to help us aggregate and present this information that you have control over, and you choose who gets to see it and how that is represented. We can actually create an opportunity for you to be rewarded, incentivized, and benefit financially through your proof. We put proof of regenerative here, ethical practices, sustainable, organic. You choose the word that fits for your operations. We're not an exclusive club. I think regeneration is an outcome that we're all aiming towards, and none of us have reached. No one is farming regeneratively. No one is doing things that are regenerative in our ecological systems at the moment, whether that is land stewardship or forestry or farming. And so that we need to be continuously incentivized. We hear about being incentivized, but we rarely as producers feel the benefit of that. Well, Grow can present an option that helps you there. We can have different negotiation strategies because we have data on a blockchain that creates more rigor, creates a lot less due diligence in ensuring that the data is what the data says it is, and really creates an opportunity for you to have a voice at the table that you've never had before. It creates off-farm income and assets. And again, I talk about this future-proofing, creating resiliency, and whether that's legacy so that you can pass the farm on to your family, or whether that's just creating the resiliency so that you continue to weather some of those elements that are outside of our control. The other thing that I want you to think about are digital assets. So Charlie mentioned Larry Fink at the beginning of the presentation. What we're seeing globally is that there's a new emerging asset class hitting the financial market system. And that asset class are digital assets. And in fact, the blockchain is a large component of that. And one of the things that happens is that we can create digital assets out of your real world assets. So we can actually create a digital asset of a cow, of a metric ton of grain, of even your equipment, in terms of creating crowdsourcing or leveraging against these digital assets, these real world assets. And we call that, that process is called tokenized real world asset, or tokenized RWA. And it's really exciting, and Grow has the blueprint and has the ability to do that. And so that's one of the benefits that the blockchain brings. And I can show you in one-on-one conversations or another conversation, how that may look for your operations, that these tokenized RWA platforms and solutions that the Grow brings are really exciting. And we're seeing that being driven from the traditional finance market space, and it's coming in waves. I mean, the floodgates have opened. So really start paying attention to digital assets. All of this leads to something that I'm this year is my underlying sort of motto or ethos. And it really goes back to 15 years of being a consultant, working with farmers globally, diversifying your balance sheets. I'm not proclaiming in the Web3 space to make you billionaires and millionaires. What I am saying, and what I have confidence in, is that I can give you the breathing room under the collar so that we can start to have different outcomes, so that you can have different conversations. That starts with diversifying your balance sheet. That really means we start plugging in this Web3 space. We start owning your data. We start monetizing it in different ways. We start leveraging this decentralized finance alongside your traditional finance. We start creating a new economy, and that's going to allow you a diversified balance sheet that's going to be a lot more opportunistic for you, the producer, not somebody else, not a third party, not the central organizations. And this is really exciting. And this is a stepping stone that I'm asking you to put that pioneer hat on and step into if you really want to start to see your operations thrive in a way that they haven't before. And if you're feeling a bit pinched, if you're feeling that you're at the edge of the cliff, this is where we're going to start. It's diversifying your balance sheet. And so why the Grow blockchain? Well, there's a lot of great reasons. We have an amazing community. Our team is really our community. We have an ability to bring token utility, that tokenized. So token, just for your information, decentralized finance is the word that I like to use. Some people put crypto in there as a term, but decentralized finance is really what it is. And it has a few different metrics. We've got coins and tokens. We talk about a token because it's a utility mechanism. It's just a mechanism that allows us to buy and sell products and services and solutions. And it also helps us create these digital assets. And so token utility is the actual use of what we're doing with this decentralized finance in this new economy. And everything runs on a node network. And so this might be a new term for some of you. Nodes really are what allow blockchains to stand apart from central servers, from your desktop applications that you have on your computer or your laptop. Nodes are a consensus metrics, they're a validator, they're an authenticator. And we had a brilliant individual that had this vision to create a very simple piece of software that was a node that did multiple things at once. So he really lent into this diversified ability that I continue to talk about. And so we call that the smart node, and that's what runs our ecosystem. And it really allows you, it's your portal to store information. It's your opportunity to use this as an off-farm asset, but it's the backbone of our blockchain. So the node utility, and it sets us apart from a lot of blockchains. And we also have this amazing governance structure. And in fact, everyone in our Grow community is working together and are owners in our Grow community. And that is really, really amazing. And so as one of the founding team members, I'm no longer considered a founder. I'm no longer part of this central group that, you know, is trying to move things. I'm just a community member, like many of the individuals that are on this call that may have invited you to this call and presentation. We have different councils that are helping us. We have a managing council. We have a Genesis council made up of subject matter experts. We have a community council so that you know, continue to have a seat at the table and weigh in on what's going on. This allows us to stand apart as a real opportunity to really move the needle in our agri-food market space. And so for all these reasons, the Grow blockchain continues to stand apart. I continue to say we're the black sheep in the blockchain community because we're doing things differently, and we're doing things differently on purpose so that we have different outcomes. I want to talk about our ecosystem really quickly. Grow has built a bunch of applications on our blockchain. We call them dApps, decentralized applications, because there's ownership and there's data. But when we were building Grow, we started with a project that was Web 2, and we brought it into the Web 3 space, and that's called Farm Tracer. And in fact, some of my founding member team and community members, Austin and Will, they started Farm Tracer really to demonstrate, you know, what was going on in their operations. And we've brought that into the blockchain, and we're doing some amazing things with it. And so we're actually tracing things from paddock to plate in multiple different supply chains, and it's working really, really well. I'll tell you about a use case in a second. We've got a market space, both a B2B commerce platform and a B2C. So if you've got products and services that you want to actually get into the hands of consumers or other farmers, we've got that spot for you. And we transaction with the Grow token, or our decentralized finance mechanism. We also wade into the ecological credit. Now, we can have many conversations on whether you agree with carbon credits or ecological credits. All I know is that there is a market space out there. There's gases up in the air. There's things that need to be in the ground. We can help you tap into this opportunity if it fits within your perspective and it actually helps your bottom line. We have that opportunity. And what we've done is created our own sandbox. So we don't subscribe to the bureaucracy that's out there. We actually streamline, we create a lot more efficiency, and we actually create a lot of upside because we create an insurable digital asset at the end of the day that's both good for the buyer, but also you as the seller should the buyers not be around. And so we're really excited to help you move into this area if it fits This isn't something that we're pushing because of one perspective or another. We've just put the frameworks together so that we can really leverage all the opportunities that are available to us in giving you a little more breathing room under your collar. Livestock was that tokenized RWA platform. We're actually tokenizing cows. We've got 200 cows in our beta program. We're moving to alpha. We're about to move into bringing this into Australia later this year. So stay tuned for that. But this is the blueprint for us to tokenize anything and all those real world assets. In fact, I actually think a lot of the ecological credit programs are going to move to tokenized real world assets. And so Grow's already there. We're positioned and we've set the structure up. And Kohima is our on-chain consultancy. And so if you're a producer and you're thinking about paying for a consultant to come and help you with your operations, that's amazing. And there's no knock to the amazing consultants that are out there. I was a consultant. I understand. But I also think about this as dead money. So if you're in a bit of a constraint point and you're going, hey, I need this wonderful knowledge in helping us, well, you could actually put that same money to use for you in being part of the Grow community, in getting some off-farm appreciating assets and introducing DeFi and still accessing all that consulting knowledge, because we have subject matter experts globally, a lot of them that you may know that you may want to tap into. And so this is a great opportunity. The benefit of that is in that work that we do with you in that consultancy, we also show you how to get all your data on chain so that you can really start to leverage owning your own data and really taking part of that data sovereignty opportunity. These are just some of the services that we provide. We've got a bunch of products that I won't get into, but these services are the linchpin, the core value that we're going to bring to farmers. And we're actually starting to see people wanting to integrate into our blockchain. And so I've got a virtual fencing company that wants to integrate. And so what they're saying is, hey, we've got great tech. We don't want to own the data that comes from it. We want the producer to. We'd like to have the blockchain in the back end so the producer can use our virtual fencing collars, own their data, and get all the benefits. We're seeing some other companies wanting to integrate into our blockchain as well. And this is really where it gets exciting. This is where people see the true benefit of what's going on. And so today we've got about 17,000 irrigated acres. We can use hectares or acres. As producers, you probably use every metrics under the sun like I do. And so we've got a lot of land. We're continuing to expand that land from an agriculture standpoint and many different crops. In fact, we're doing a lot of work with different grains and pulses and cereals. We've got about 25,000 head and another 7,000 head that just joined us this week. So that continues to expand. And we also work with conservation land. And so in all the work that we do, and when we think about the work that agri-food produces, we think about conservation and conservation easement, and we can actually help reforest and create momentum in really conserving those areas that need to be conserved so that we can work in around them or with them. And so we're working with about 10,000 hectares of forested land between Peru and Canada, actually. And so that's really exciting on how the blockchain is fitting in there. So from a practical standpoint, Farm Tracer really helped one of our larger production operations. By the way, if you're a producer on the line, if you know producers, Grow started at the production level and we started working with producers. What we see with a lot of emerging technology in agriculture is that a lot of people go to the smallhold or medium-hold farms as a starting spot because that's a low-hanging fruit and we can figure out how things work. We started at probably the hardest position. We started with a production operation that was multifaceted. So they do cattle and milk and cropping systems and get into stone orchards. And they also have a soil amendment byproduct. They've got the largest vermiculture pit in North America, about 8 miles of vermiculture. And so starting at that level is massive and very, very complicated, but it's served us very well because we know we can do it here. We can scale down and really work with anyone globally at any size operation. And so we've worked as small as 1.5 acres all the way up to hundreds of thousands of acres. And so Farm Tracer is a program tracing, in this case, beef from paddock all the way to plate. And the very first client really that came on and really was a downstream benefit beneficiary of this traceability information was a little company called Amazon, who you may have heard of. They bought a sports arena in America and they renamed it Climate Pledge Arena. The executive chef there has a mandate to only bring in regeneratively sourced food and beverage, and everything needs to be traced back to source of origin. Well, they had a really hard time with their meat. We introduced them to Royal Family Farms, and lo and behold, they signed a 5-year, 7-figure contract. They love the metadata, the information, traceability, and pretty much their word to us was, hey, we're Amazon, we're going to be challenged 6 ways from Sunday on proving that our mandate is going to hold true. And that's what's happening today. And the consumers, if you ever go there or end up in Seattle, Washington, you can actually scan a QR code and you can get this very nice pictorial description of how your meat was raised, where it came from, and the origin story of that operation. And so really connecting you closer to the producer, in this case, Royal Family Farms. So it's a wonderful use case. We've done that in other crops as well, and working with some other CPGs as downhill beneficiaries. But this is really the ultimate use case for this solution. EcoMint, we've got 27 million of fully validated data that's gone through in terms of the ecological credits. We're doing work, again, agroforestry, we're doing soil sequestration. This image, by the way, is an image that I created to really demonstrate the cycle. So it's not just pulling carbon into the soil, but it's really understanding the cycle. But we can help you monetize that at the end of the day. Rapid validation, higher retention value for you, the producer. So more dollars back in your pocket. The Nourish market space, again, a great spot, business to business. And so, think about your operations as your current market space. Maybe there's another market space that we can introduce you to direct to consumer using the Nourish platform. Or maybe it's alongside your current direct to consumer platform, but now introducing decentralized finance. And this is what the Nourish market space really allows you to provide. By the way, we named it Nourish because our mission, again, is to nourish people, animals, and the planet. So the Nourish market space makes a lot of sense. Tokenized RWA, again, love to talk to you about those real world assets and how that benefits your operation and how that's moving forward. And I can show you a little bit of the beta testing and alpha testing we're doing with that livestock platform, literally creating these little digital assets. By the way, you don't lose ownership, so you don't lose titlement of your actual real world assets. So that's a scary factor. A lot of people think, oh, I have to give up the title of the ownership. Well, a lot of us know with cattle, the bank might own a lot of our cattle anyway, but the practicality of it is that you actually don't lose ownership. You can actually just create these digital assets that benefit your farm and really create another income stream. So again, the mission, bringing that nourishment forward, but with transparency, with trust, and with traceability across the whole component. So whether it's financial traceability, whether it's data traceability, we can embed that as a benefit to your operations. And so how can you be involved? Well, let's talk about this a little bit. The very first thing to do is really understand that, hey, you're probably already doing a lot of digital banking right now as it stands. And so we actually have a self-custodial, means you own it, digital wallet. I would recommend go get that. It's free. Set that up, or ask the person that invited you to this presentation to help you set that up. That's the stepping stone one. It will show you that it's not that hard to really think about decentralized finance, otherwise known sometimes as crypto, but the Grow token, how these digital wallets function. And if you're already doing some sort of online banking, the stepping stone here is very, very short, and really it's not that scary. Then two, let's schedule a call. Let's schedule a call with me so I can talk about your operations specifically. Again, I've got experience in grain cropping systems, in livestock operation, and animal husbandry. It could be smaller ruminants as well. We've got ducks that are currently being nursed somewhere else during our winter, but currently bringing those in. I've farmed quail for a while on my operations. And so, animals in general and how that fits in. I've got experience in agroforestry and controlled environment agriculture. And so it doesn't matter where you fall in as a producer, I'd love to talk to you and see how Grow can fit in. So off-farm assets, how can that diversify your balance sheet? Talking about tokenized real-world assets, talking about data sovereignty, talking about how you can find new market spaces. All of that is what Grow provides here. And so thank you, Jen, for putting up the element there and my link. We'll put it up again at the end of the presentation. Make sure you book a call. let's start with having a great conversation. And if it doesn't fit with your schedule, whoever invited you to this call, get with them, have a conversation with them, and then connect with me. As you can tell, I'm keen to get up early and work with your schedule and Australia, no matter where you are, whether you're west or east or south or north. About 3 weeks ago, I was talking to somebody from Darwin who's really interested about how Grow can fit up there. It's an area of Australia I've never been to, actually. I'd like to go visit at some point. And so really, take the step. It's not a scary step. I don't bite. And let's have a good chin wag about what's going on and how Grow can fit in. And so with that, I do want to leave a bit of time here. I know I've taken probably 6 minutes more than I was expecting. Would love to answer some questions. Love to be able to dive into any clarity that we need and see what great information and questions you may have.
Okay, let's see if anyone has any questions. If you want to unmute, if you've got a question for Neil. Otherwise, sometimes people are a little bit shy.
We've got some people joining us from North Carolina, actually, all the way from America today, up early, and that's wonderful to see. So you can see our Grow community is, really supportive of the work that we're trying to do in Australia and coming in, and so that's wonderful. I will say too,
sorry,
if you've joined this call today, come back. Sometimes you want to hear this 2 or 3 times to let it sink in. But if you come back into these calls, I encourage you to bring a friend. Tap somebody on the shoulder, somebody in your network. That could be a brother or sister. That could be somebody else in the agriculture community. That could be maybe somebody that you deal with in the supply chain. Maybe it's a processor. Maybe it's an abattoir. Maybe it's somebody that's working very hard in those environmental credits section of life. Invite them into the call as well. Let's really start to expand those that are coming in and wanting to gain some different perspective and new understanding of what Web3 and the Grow blockchain means in agriculture.
Yeah, so Neil's very kindly offered to jump himself out of bed at 3 a.m. each Wednesday morning. So that's this same time, 7 p.m. Queensland time, 8 p.m. New South Wales time. So we'll be here every week so we can invite farmers and anyone involved in the ag industry, really, which really is all of us in some way, given we all need to eat. So we can invite people along and hear what Grow offers. And I'm going to pop, because as we know, farmers need a bit of a hand. And I'm just going to pop this. So I popped this up before, but you can actually click on the screen and that link will take you directly to Neil's calendar. And then
can I just jump in there for a moment? I just want to say, anyone who is on, just, I'm glad Jen put that back up, but just jump in there and grab a time because, everyone's situation's different. And, you'll have some questions and Neil's experience and knowledge is huge. So, yeah, totally encourage you.
Yeah.
Whoops, it just dropped off again, Jen.
Excellent. Okay. Well, Neil, thank you once again. We really, really do appreciate you showing up for us every week, and we'll keep working to help more farmers come along and have a listen and tune in. And I hope that some of the farmers that were on tonight, I know there was a lot of new names on the call tonight. So hopefully you have some great conversations in the week looking forward.
Yeah. Fantastic. Excellent. Thanks for having me. And I look forward to talking to many of you. Get those meetings booked up here, and we'll see you next Wednesday. By the way, upcoming Wednesdays, we're going to have some clips from actual farmers using the blockchain and some of the benefits, and so we're going to start to present some of the use cases that are happening. So come back and hear from other farmers as well on how this is benefiting their operations.
Excellent. Okay, super. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you again next week. Okay.
Thanks, everyone. All right, thanks, Neil. Bye, Jen.